Saludos. Welcome back to another episode of the Latino Dad Connection podcast. My name is Efrain Reyes, and I am your host for this podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time and joining us and listening to this podcast. I really appreciate it. And today we're going to be having a very beautiful conversation about unity, with Thanksgiving coming up, and the story about uniting as a family, uniting as a tribe, uniting as a country. It seems to be one of the constant struggles, and has been for many years. Why is it that we see each other as different compared to see each other's similarities for many different reasons: race, language, political affiliation, many other things. So first of all, I just want to wish you all a beautiful Thanksgiving. I hope that you guys have an amazing Thanksgiving of dinner, and just want to thank also all the. It's important to recognize all the native people of the original people of these lands. Recognize that there were people here before us, before we were able to enjoy this beautiful land. I want to recognize here in where I live the people of Tongva, the people of Ahashmin, the people of Gravileño. Thank you so much for all that you do and you continue to do. So, yeah, to be stewards of this land. And also, I want to thank all the people that are working in the farms this year, this season, because without them, we would not have the blessings that we have in our tables. So all the farm workers that continue to work day in, day out, all the truck drivers, people that work at the stores, everybody that has to do um, something to have our food delivered to us at our tables. And with that being said, today I'm going to be talking to a brother that's mission is to bring back the unity in humanity. His name is Lorenzo. Lorenzo is a passionate advocate for unity and compassion, dedicated to fostering the world where humanity thrives in collaboration, kindness, and shared progress. As a devoted father of two, Lorenzo draws inspiration from his own family to build a brighter, more connected future. He has a deep belief in the power of community and the potential of collective growth. Lorenzo had launched a GoFundMe campaign to bring his vision of creating a more unity in humanity. His mission is to inspire individuals and communities to come together to break down barriers and embrace a shared sense of purpose and connection. So I really enjoyed my conversation with Lorenzo. We talked a little bit about his upbringing, about his fatherhood journey, and with this project that he has of bringing back unity to humanity. With that being said, let's get started with our episode. All right, welcome, hermano. Welcome, brother Lorenzo. Thank you for joining us here at the Latino Dad Connection podcast. I'm very excited to talk to you, dive deeper into your story, your brand, and a lot of other things, fatherhood. So before we start, diving deep, I'd love to give you some space to, obviously say hello to the audience and share a little bit about your story, brother. Can you tell us a little bit about your upbringing? Yeah, a little bit about yourself so we can get to know you a little bit better.
So, one, thank you, brother, for bringing this opportunity into my awareness. And with that, for everyone listening, if we could just take a deep breath in just to
Mm,
honor the gift that we were given in life,
yeah.
that I think is very important. So, just to honor our lungs and our body in this moment and just take a slow inhale, just receive that oxygen, then just release the gift back to the trees, the carbon dioxide.
Mm,
Thank you for that. Yeah, for me, being in this moment now, being able to articulate something that I was reminded of, I wouldn't really call it my brand. I think humanity is what we are all told that this existence is in
mhm.
many ways, but I think there's a message within the message that gets lost, especially around times of conflict, division,
Yeah.
divisive. techniques that are constantly pumped into our society, into
Mm,
our so for me, I was reminded of the message, and I'll talk about that more later
yeah.
about what it means to be unity in humanity, and
Mm,
why it's so important for the betterment of our communities, but more importantly, our children.
mm,
And I'm from a few places on the East Coast. I was born in Brooklyn, but I
mm,
moved up and down the East Coast. My mother, she was a single mom. Parents with between her and my father weren't together, so there was a lot of just unrooting that happened in my early years when I was an infant and into my toddler years, and then my younger brother was born. So there was just a lot of challenges my mother faced. So moving a lot in and
mm,
out of different communities that was a little more just following the same ideas of poverty. And it was just a lot of habitual cyclistic living that my family was
mhm,
going through, at least my immediate family. And
mm,
my mom was someone who was just instrumental in doing her best to survive as a mother of color in this society. So
right.
with that, growing up, I was put into a lot of situations, a lot of traumas, a lot of experiences that kind of guided me as a younger person, that led me to these moments now where I'm a little more aware of myself. But back then, with the energy that I was given, and I had no idea how to transcend or transmute it, or didn't even understand the power of manifestation and what it meant to be accountable. I took that same energy that was given to me and gave it to others who tried to love me. So there's some situations out there in my life where I was not proud of who I was back then and what has
Mm,
happened, but I am here now in these moments because I'm definitely more in control of myself and more
yeah.
at the overall experience of what it means to be me, and not so
Mm,
much just living to the energies outside of me that were pulling me in different directions. And
mhm,
I say that because no matter who it is, everyone has their story. Everyone at some point was an infant or a child, regardless if it was a positive or negative experience. We were all impacted and given tools, or sometimes given baggage to carry
mhm,
with us throughout this life. And for me, being who I am now, I just can articulate myself better, but I can also see my brothers and sisters, my reflections in life with other
mhm,
human beings, especially those that actually have a story that may have been tough to hear for some people, but an experience that they still hold with them and use to be a human in this life. So,
mm. Thank you, brother. Thank you for sharing a little bit about your story. It seems to me that being raised by a single mother really shaped a lot of who you are, along with different experiences that you experienced as a young boy, moving to different places. Can you share more about what are some of those experiences that really marked you as who you are today as Lorenzo, as the man that you are, and really shaped who you are? Maybe can you share maybe a couple, two or three experiences?
yeah, it's so when I was let's say I really became more aware of myself as a child, just like what my life was like when I was 6, 7 years old, and my mother
Okay.
met my stepfather. And
Mm,
he wasn't the best representation of masculine now that I
mm,
look back on the years spent with him. But at that time, I
mm-hmm,
was starting to come into my own awareness a little bit. Not so much of what it means to be a human, but more so just what I wanted and didn't want, and what I
mm-hmm,
was looking for, and not really expectations, but just asking for and calling for. And a lot of that was attention from my mom. So when I saw,
mm,
her being a single mom, but then her attention would go to other men, and then those men actually weren't really good representations. Sometimes abusive, sometimes just totally neglecting her. The energy that was carried was kind of shown to me, and I just took it on as if that was the way to be and how to be.
mm,
So, um, over the time of that life, just dealing with the experiences that came with what it meant to be Lorenzo back then, a
mm-hmm,
lot of it was just learning and really just taking on energy that I had no idea would kind of guide me as a man until I
mm,
was enough to get back in the driver's seat. And being in shelters too, like at one point,
mm,
living in impoverished lifestyles, you find yourself when you're not fully aware of how to manifest abundance on the
yeah.
other side. spectrum, and my mother was on that other side of it. And there
Mm-hmm.
were times that we were in shelters, so we were right next to people who looked just like us, but in the same
Yeah.
predicament, same situation. But as a kid, you don't really notice it until you're at school. And being at school, elementary, middle school is where kids are kind of brutal, and then
Mm-hmm.
they find a target and they see holy shoes and clothes
Mm.
that don't fit and things like that, and they see a target for
Yeah.
someone to be victimized or be bullied. So that was the only time that I really started to see like maybe there is something different about my life that everyone else is not experiencing, or at least not to the degree that I'm experiencing it. So, and as I got older, being in high school and in college, a lot of it changed. I had family that eventually stepped in to help and give me and my brother an opportunity to at least graduate from high school. But even then, so much of my experience for what I was like as a kid has already like kind of not cemented, but kind of started to root into my habitual thinking and living. So I was
Mm-hmm.
very ungrateful for some of the things that were put in front of me in high school. I was a little more resentful, like, where were you people this entire time? All this stuff was
Right.
happening before. Like, why now does everyone want to be, stepping in to save? And then school for me was already a disconnect because I already had traumas from school. So going into high school, the only thing about it was a different dynamic. I was at more just public schools that were really kind of lower on the grading scale in the sense of how well the grades were doing. And then I ended
Mm-hmm.
up going to my mother's twin sister. She ended up having my aunt. She ended up having a situation that was a little bit different. Mind you, I'm not trying to script Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but it felt like that. Going
Mm-hmm.
from what I was like before and then going into a life that was a little more stable, suburbia.
Yeah.
School was even predominantly white. So there was a
Mm.
lot that I had to kind of correct in my mind of what it meant to be experiencing all of this. So there was still a lot of resentment, a lot of rebellion, things that I can't take back that were done, but I can also know that I've learned from as a kid and as a teenager. And now that I've kind of grown into who I am today, I still make mistakes. I'm still totally involved in learning what it means to be me. I'm just a little more aware of how I make others feel, if I say it that
Mm.
way. And more importantly, what I want to have come back to me in a good, loving energy, and not so much a combative or divisive
Yeah. Yeah,
energy. So
brother. Thank you for sharing that. I love that you made that reference to Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Did
it's what it
did
felt
you
like.
did you relate to the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air as
I
you
used
were
to watch it
watching?
all the time. Yeah, I used to
Yeah.
watch it all the time. Um, I did have situations in life that my family like kind of kicked me out, but then
Mm.
when I um got in some real trouble when I was in high school, my freshman year, to the point where I
Mm.
guess my mom said that it was too bad for me to stay around there.
Yeah.
So like when she sent me back, that I was like kind of going into that idea, because I think he left in the story
Yeah.
as bullies on the basketball court. So yeah, it's just those stories are real. Not so much the comedy all the time, but
Right.
definitely just the traumas that come with uh going through what it means to be in poverty as a young child, but not really knowing until you're around others, and
Yeah.
then um trying to assimilate yourself when you're kind of taken away from your mom, which is your root, which is your rock, regardless of what she looks like to the rest of the world. To her, she's
Right. Mm.
still super mom, and
Yeah.
that's something that I had to navigate as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah, that's interesting that you say that because now remembering on the show, they don't really talk about that, right? They don't talk
yeah,
about the trauma of like removing this teenager from the mom and like that's what they know of. And also, I do a lot of fatherhood work. This is what we're about, like bringing more awareness of the importance of men and fathers, and how they can really impact their children's life, right? So the
right.
common trend is that the father is not there. The father is not there. And I don't know if you've seen that episode where Will uh meets his father again, and they're gonna go on a road trip. like a really sentimental, like one of the most famous clips of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I always like to share that clip because it shows that the importance of fatherhood, even as children get older, you know, and get into their teenage years and stuff like that. They still, you know, need a guidance. They still need their fatherhood, their father around, or at least a father figure, right? For you, it seems like your father figure was your stepdad. Maybe there was multiple men there. What did that teach you about what masculinity was or is? You know, having those steps that stepdads around, whether it be something that was skewed or whether it be something that was like really good, you know? What were some of the teachings that you got from that?
Well, with my stepfather, he was around for 8 years, but it was a lot of just, it was more traumatic memories and
Mm,
sadness than it
okay.
was happiness or good memories or things that I can reflect on to say, wow,
Okay.
that was like a great positive role in my life. And sometimes I was so rebellious to it that I was constantly being punished for it or get
Mm,
trouble in school. So I was at one point ended up in an alternative school dealing with him.
mm,
My path was kind of going down the statistic lane in a sense of
mm-hmm.
just another person of color that can end up dead or in jail based off of how I was seeing how unhappy I was as a child, and that
Right.
unhappiness starting to spill over into other relationships, other people in my life at a young age. But what helped me also was leaving that environment and having to deal with the unrooting with my mom, but
Mm,
going into my aunt's home because she married someone, she was married. Her
mm,
marriage was much more healthier, and the person looked nothing like me. He was actually think Irish and German and maybe some other races involved, but he was more European than he was of African or Native American descent. So his skin color was much lighter than mine. So for me, that helped me see that it didn't really matter what we look like. Because coming from the South at this time when I was staying with my stepfather, I was living in South Carolina, and being in South Carolina was a lot of just culture shock because I came from the North where I didn't really experience racism or anything like that. And then being in South Carolina, seeing my mother deal with racism, seeing my stepfather deal with racism, and then on myself, like being around certain kids who just didn't care what they said about you or how they said it. So for me, I had already had this division in my mind with lighter skinned people. So when I
right.
got to my aunt who was married to someone and there was more forward thinking in New York, it wasn't like that in the South.
Right.
She was showing me without even knowing that there is healthier masculine out there. And on top of it, it didn't matter what you looked like, it mattered what you brought and what your energy was being used for. And he was a lot of love. He was very stern. He was not so much a disciplinary, but he was more of just a constant figure of consistency and strength. And that was things that I actually learned in my 4 years. It was like a crash course on what it
Mm,
really to be a man in this life. And my father is alive. My biological father is alive. He only knew my mother for a couple of months when he
mm-hmm.
conceived me. I guess they had their own reasons why they just didn't want to be together. And she
Right.
moved away from New York. So I only saw my dad maybe once when I was in my younger years, and I didn't start
Mm-hmm.
developing a relationship with him that I'm still figuring out how to weave in a harmonious way until my late 20s. So, and I'm
Mm,
33 now. So yeah, but
mm-hmm.
he's been alive all this time, and he was very aware of, I guess, me and my mom. He didn't know where we were sometimes, but he did know that I was alive and out there. So
Yeah.
had that imagination, especially when I met him when I think I was 6 at the time, and I stayed a few months with him, and then I ended up going back to my mom's. At that time, I created an imagination of him. So
Mm,
when I would go through things at a young age or from the ages of 6 to 13, 14, there are times I wish like my dad just show up and pick me up or take me out of.
mm,
So
mm-hmm.
that's constant, like even though he isn't the man, now that I know him, I know he's not what I imagined him to be. I've
Right.
really come to terms with that. But as a child, it kind of also helped the rebellion because I didn't submit to what I saw. I just felt like, well, I know my dad and I know he's
Yeah.
out and this person is not. So I did have that tug and pull on what it meant to be masculine, but then I also had my own imaginations that was creating a character that wasn't so much what I was seeing because I didn't want to
Mm,
be that. And
mm,
I didn't realize how much of that impacted me until I was making mistakes and doing things that wasn't totally healthy to the people that loved me. But now that I'm older with my own children, I still have that programming in my mind not to be what my father was, my stepfather
mm,
was, excuse me, and
mm,
my father, so to speak, because my father
mhm.
was totally absent. Like he didn't even try either. So in many ways, the traumas, unless if you accept the traumas, it can give you a guidebook to what you don't want to perpetuate. But
Right.
if you allow the trauma to stick into your main programming for who you are as a human being, then it can lead you right down the same path, if not worse. And
Hmm.
that's something that I had to come to terms with. And when I did that, I started to find my own footing and let go of the victimization of myself, and started to put on the overall cape, so to speak, especially when my children were born. When my first son was born, something just clicked in me, and I just told myself, no matter what, I will at least be here. He will know that I'm here.
Hmm.
If anything else, he will just know that his dad is right over there. He could just walk right over, and his dad is there. So
Mm.
that's been the most important thing for me too.
Wow, man. That's beautiful. Just like taking it all in, of the just different parts of your story as you creating that timeline, you know? And it seems like there was a few turning points in your life. Seems like one of the turning points was when you moved out of your mother's house and went into your aunt's house and really saw a different perspective, saw a different uh, relationship, different way of thinking, of being. Um, was there other parts of your life that seemed like there was like a turning point, and like and I know you mentioned fatherhood, right? Like that's another pivotal point that like something that shifted, right? And you said, you know what? Now I'm a father. So maybe we can dive a little bit more into that. Like, tell me a little bit more about your fatherhood journey. And I do a lot of work with fathers, and I always talk about like the moment when you knew you were going to be a father. That's a really pivotal moment, right? Because the where we're at that moment, it can really dictate like how we're going to be as fathers. Was this child wanted? Was this child not wanted? Was this a short-term relationship? Was this a stable, a long-term relationship? Was it, were you married? Were you not married? And you know, I talk a lot about that, but I just want to kind of, for the viewers that are listening, understand that this is like a really important moment for men and for women, obviously. But you know, we're talking about fatherhood. So I would love to hear your story. How was your story when you knew you were going to be a father? What was going through your mind?
To be totally honest, it was a roller coaster for me.
Okay.
We were in Costa Rica, me and my partner. We were only dating for maybe, I want to say, a little under a year at the time. We were still trying to figure out if this is even something we wanted, so we traveled to Costa Rica together to see what our relationship would be like. And we were just picking up the pieces from a lot of our own just things that we were going through as a young couple who didn't really know each other, didn't really know what baggage we both came with, and just navigating also New York City life. She was a career businesswoman in New York City. I was working in marketing at the time. And when we came together, a lot of things started to change, especially with employment. So when we kind of took a step back, she wanted to travel and she offered me to come with her. And so I said, okay,
Mm,
yeah, I can see that as an opportunity. I don't really have much to offer financially at the time, but she was willing to, work with me, and we ended up going out there. And when we did, she and I ended up conceiving without knowing within the first few weeks. And then she found out a month or two while we were in Costa Rica that she was pregnant. And we, at that moment, when I found out, like I was kind of in disbelief. One, because I don't think some men know scientifically, yes, it's possible. But in a way of like who I was, how I was living, I didn't think I was even ready for something like that, or it
mm,
was possible for me to have a child. let alone a baby.
So
And
it wasn't really on your
it wasn't really,
mind.
we spoke about like, oh, how beautiful our child would be, but it
Uh-huh.
wasn't joking. But I
Yeah.
still, now I see why it was outwardly being said, because we were casting our own manifestation without
Mm-hmm.
realizing out there.
Mm-hmm.
But we were, we were both mixed people with different backgrounds culturally. So how
Mm-hmm.
it would look, we always assumed, oh, it would be beautiful, or if we had a kid, it'd be a really beautiful baby
Mm.
just come up in a conversation. So in some ways, we did choose and we created
Right.
our reality, of course. But at that moment, I was still in disbelief. And then it
Mm-hmm.
kind of, what happened at the time was my best friend, one of the most closest people in my life. He just so happened to be traveling to Costa Rica for something totally unrelated, and he
Mm-hmm.
wanted to be where we were in the forest, because we were working on a butterfly farm at the time. We were volunteering.
Mm-hmm.
So he wanted to come out and see that, and then yeah, he also wanted to just have a little vacation. So I ended up telling him. He was one of the first people I told, and he was shocked, but he was also excited for us and really happy. He thought it was a great news. And what my whole thing was, I was happy, but I was also totally afraid, and I was
Yeah.
afraid because of my financial situation.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in high school, my uncle, um, when he and my aunt conceived my nephew, not my nephew, my cousin, um, they were already financially stable. Money was already coming in, but my aunt had already had my other cousin as well, her daughter,
Mm-hmm.
a couple of years younger than me. But he married in with knowing that she already had a daughter, but he still brought in his son, my little cousin Kyle. And what he was able to do was bring in income and stability and all the
Mm-hmm.
things that you already had. So for me, that clicked in my mind. I'm thinking, I don't have any of that right now, but I have a baby on the way. So we
Mm-hmm.
go back from Costa Rica. We realized we had to leave. It was maybe a couple of weeks after finding out. We ended up booking a ticket back. We were planning on traveling to another country. All those plans changed because she wanted to have the baby in New York to be around her mom in the Bronx.
Mm. Yeah.
So what we did was, when we went back, I had to go stay at my biological father's house, who I thought I had a decent relationship with at the time, but I realized he didn't want no parts of me being there, especially with the
Mm.
baby on the way. So he was in my ear every day, just kind of in a very tough love way, telling me I need to get the up out of there and
Mm.
find a job, which I was doing actively. Like, I already knew these things, so I was using my degree in marketing. I was looking for jobs actively every day, but
Yeah.
he made it way more stressful than it needed to be, in a sense of supporting me as his son. So when that happened, again, that was a lot of me, the tug and pull in my mind, like even that, sometimes doubting if I was even capable of doing it and actually being
Mm.
a good dad. And things started to fall into place. I found the job. We got approved for an apartment, thankfully. So we ended up moving in together within a few months before my son was born. And then
Mm.
this was the first time we were officially like in our own place together. So that was also, it's like we were kind of jumping into steps of a relationship that sometimes it takes people years to do. We were like fast forwarding within a span of a year to 2 years. So
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
when he was born, all of the things that I had going on within me, the doubts, the fear, it kind of just flooded away, even the financial stuff. Because the job I had, it wasn't like I was, amazingly financially well off for it. I was still paycheck to paycheck, but I was very much excited because I felt like this is a new chapter for me. And now I have this little being in front of me who's like tiny and so fragile, but looking at me with the brightest eyes, just full of what wonder, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
I started to
Yeah.
see, more importantly, my connection to spirit. Like I've never fully had like a real aha moment. And even though I prayed for things in my past, I got prayers were answered.
Mm-hmm.
This situation with my child was like, I realized it wasn't even my child. Like I was just a
Mm.
guide or a part of the overall plan. And this soul came out
Mm-hmm.
expecting to just be guided and loved and nurtured. And that
Mm-hmm.
hit me in my soul to show me, one, we all started like this. So the resentments and angers that I had towards other people and what they've done
Mm.
and all the things they did,
Yeah.
I realized that they all started the same way. Even my dad,
Mm.
stepfather, all these people, they were a little baby, and things happened to them
Ooh.
as they experienced life that created whoever they are to me in my own brain. And it's not even what is true, because the characters I have of them in my mind is not really who they actually are. And
Yeah.
that was, it's like all
Yeah.
these things started flooding out of me when I realized that I was a father now and I was raising a soul, a baby
Mm.
boy. It helped me to start to look for forgiveness and see more forgiveness in others, especially for how they show up, and
Mm.
be, because we all come out of the womb. We all enter the world gasping for air. We started this
Yeah.
recording with taking a breath in because it's
Taking
a
a breath.
honor of
Yeah.
the truth. And when I saw
Hmm.
him gasp for air and cry for air, and then he was calm, like he wasn't even a crying baby. He came out. Remember him trying to just lift his head up and look around at all of us as he just was out of his mother within seconds. He's like looking,
Yeah.
trying to. It's like crazy. He already had his neck up and everything, and it just made me see like how we all enter this planet and what creates the unity within us all. So yeah.
I love that, bro. Thank you so much for sharing that. That like having that reminder that we all started that way, right? We all started like I want to say like a blank state, but we all started pure. We all started with just wanting to live, with gasping
Mhm.
for air, wanting the love from our parents, right? And throughout whatever happened in our life, trauma, situations, circumstances, we became the people that we are, right?
Mhm.
And through that, want to go more into the unity part, we started to also get divided, right? Get divided into who we are, what we look like, what language we speak, where we live, all those things, right? Even like right here, our podcast is called Latino Dad Connection. Even in the Latino community, there's so much division of like who you are, if you're from a specific country, if you're from Mexico, you're from El Salvador or stuff like that, or even if your skin color is lighter or darker, there's so much divisiveness within our own like culture, right? And let alone like other cultures. So it's like it is just I love this message of humanity, right? What does it mean to be human? And the unity that we can create in that. So I love to go more into that. You said you were reminded of this message. I'd love to hear more about that story. How would you remind it? What does this mean to you?
Yeah, so for me, the message that unity was kind of really starting to show up in my life, um, before my son was born, me and my partner Leah, we watched these two films. We watched Zeitgeist, and then we watched Zeitgeist Addendum. And both of those films were on Netflix at the time. This was like before Netflix got really mainstream. They used to have more thought-provoking documentaries, and they still do, but back then some of them were a little more on the conspiracy theory side in many ways. But Zeitgeist Addendum wasn't so much a conspiracy theory. The way Zeitgeist Addendum was created was to help you understand the monetary system, how
Mm,
it operates, what it's actively doing, not just to our country, but to every country around the world. And then they also spoke about a solution called the Venus Project, which was basically a totally resource-based society, not so much a monetary system society, which was pretty thought-provoking. And it also woke me up to this veil that's over all of us. Because yes,
mm,
we were all born through our mothers. We all enter the
right.
same gasping for the one gift. It's not our mother's tit. It's not to be held. It's air. And when we get that air, we feel sometimes these mothers only, like the way things work with these mothers and fathers, like who knows if they even want the baby or don't want the baby. Like there's so many
Mm,
stories that come up with a
yeah.
child, but it's still the most important thing is this, that child is still breathing. And if that child is still,
Mm,
that child has a chance. And that's the beauty of the gift that we're given. And we're
mm-hmm.
all recipients of the same gift. Therefore, we're all united through the same experience because it starts with a breath. And for me, when I was listening to the documentary of Zeitgeist Addendum, it showed me that there is again a veil that has us all kind of cloaked in this spell, so to speak, in a sense that we're all in a rat race. You've heard the term before. We're all
Yeah.
chasing. We're all not taking a moment to look around and maybe see that this is not just earth. Maybe this is actually heaven. And we just are living under the idea that we have to be constantly doing and struggling and paying bills and doing all these things. So instead of us seeing the blatant heaven in front of us,
Mm-hmm.
we're seeing more so stress and anxiety and
Mm-hmm.
anger and division and war and
Mm-hmm.
constant and just constant pumping of these kind of vibrations that one close us inward, closes our hearts, closes our opportunity to be connected. And then two, we have no idea that our true essence is to be united in community and unity and
Right.
humanity. We're actually the total opposite. And that's why even you spoke on it a few moments ago about the Latino community. I used to live in Washington Heights in New York City. Dominicans and Puerto Ricans would have the worst attitudes towards each other,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not even so far removed from each other. They're really not, but they don't see each other as nowhere near close to committed to the idea that you're my brother and you're my sister. It's more, no, you're on that block, I'm on this block. And
Mm-hmm.
that same little thinking is just a reflection of the overarching theme. Go all the way out to how the maps look. There's lines everywhere. There's division everywhere. There's
Mm-hmm.
politics everywhere. There's governments all built to kind of keep the overall dream that we are more divided than we are united. And for
Yeah.
me, um, being one, having the opportunity to experience, like I said, Denim, that documentary, and then fast forward to, I want to say, I think it was 2019 or 2020 when George Floyd was unfortunately taken from this earth.
Mm.
That situation happened. It wasn't that like it was just that situation that happened with that human. It was the countless research I've done over the years, just for people of color in particular in
Right.
the United States and what has happened. And it
Right.
had been a state of beings at the time. I thought Trump would get another 4 years. So I thought we were just going to see more and more of this for a consistent 8 years.
Right.
And I just started meditating and asking myself, Spirit, what is it that you want from me? Why is the world the way it is, to the point where we can see a man die on television and still
Yeah.
people have a debate about if it was right or wrong? Because it didn't matter what the color was. The people were still debating, well, he was a counterfeiter and it was this, but it's like
Mm-hmm.
a human being was just taken from us all in front of us on
Yeah.
the world to see on people's cell phones, and there's still a debate if it was right or wrong. So at that time there was a lot of anger and resentment. I just started to just ask myself, I don't want to live like this. I don't want to be in a state of anger or fear or see someone who is the total opposite color of me and think that they're the enemy, when I grew up in a household at one point where my uncle was the most healthy form of masculine that I ever had at the time.
Mm.
So there was just so many things kind of interwoven within me. And then it just glared out, humanity, humanity. I was just saying to myself, I am humanity. We are humanity. And then I started to see that unity, literally in my mind at that moment,
Mm-hmm.
was written in human. It's not like the U is somewhere else and the N. It's literally one by follow after another. The word
Yeah.
is written within
Unity.
unity. And if you look into it, same as with community. If you look into the word, you will see that unity is basically structured in the word. And that's the overarching theme. That's what unites all of us, is that we are unity. We just don't see the glaring reminders that bring us to that truth. And at that time, I just wanted to figure out a way to bring this reminder back to all of us. I didn't want it to say, oh, this is a brand that I'm creating, I'm trying to mind. Like, no, it was never like that. It was more about reminding people when they see a shirt like this or flags. I was thinking about doing flags, I was thinking about doing pens, all kinds of things, just to remind people that within the humanity, within the overarching theme of what it means to be alive, the person breathing next to you is also your brother or sister, even
Mm.
if you don't truly understand what that means. Like, we're all breathing together.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Some if some overarching being came in or some alien that we don't really comprehend came in, we would all unite quickly because it would be we're all subject to the same experience. Something outside of this world event has now happened that united all of us.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
that way. We could be reminded of that truth before anything like that happens. And I think it's all on purpose. And I don't want to get too far into the conspiracy, but I do believe that how government is structured with the right wing and left wing, how the branches are structured, legislative, judicial, and executive, everything is like segmented and basically segregated without really saying how segregated it is on purpose to kind of give us to accept, well, no, this is separate and this is separate. So the illusion of
Hmm.
separation is everywhere. It's through
Yeah.
everything, even
Yeah.
in jobs. A manager is higher than an associate. Like it's all
Hmm.
separate. There's levels. There's never a sense of we're all equals and we're all on the same page. And the monetary system further ignites that flame much more than we will ever comprehend. And now we got other new things showing up like crypto and whatever, but it's still the same theme. It's just separating certain classes and keeping people who can never have access to these things away from those who has all of the access to it.
Hmm.
People
Hmm.
are creating these artificial living experiences and calling it happiness, but in
Yeah.
reality, that the detriment to others. So
Mm. Beautiful, brother. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, man. I think I agree with you with a lot of these systems that have been created, government, health system, like there's school system, all of these criminal system have been created with an agenda in mind, right? And that benefit uh, mostly the ones that created it, and not the ones that are being served or being affected by it. So yeah, this message of unity is really, really important now, and it was in 2020 when, unfortunately we saw the death of George Floyd and many others, right? Many others. This is not a single case.
mhm.
Um, so I love that you are putting out this message now. We have Trump again. You said I thought he was gonna get 8 years. Well, he is gonna get 8 years, which is crazy to me because I think it furthers divides people, with I know for me and our community, a big fear is deportation, you know. In my family, I know people that have been deported, that has separated families, that had left children without their father, without their mother. And now, he's trying to like have the biggest mass deportation in history, right? And which I don't think we understand the impact that that's gonna have in the community in
Mhm.
terms of like trauma and things like that, right? So having this message of, hey, let's continue finding that unity and humanity in people, I think is very critical at this moment. So I love that, man, and I want to encourage you to continue sharing that message, and I thank you for sharing that message with us here, so more people know, right? More people know the importance of uniting together. The people know the importance of seeing each other as brothers and sisters, like you mentioned, and continuing to hopefully, be a community, right? Like you mentioned. Wow. Thank you, brother. I really appreciate it. This really fired me up with this message. Want to give you a chance to, if there's any last message you want to share with the audience, and then where can people find you? Where can people connect with you, support your work, support you as a human, as a father? Yeah, let us know, brother.
Yeah, brother, thank you. Thank you for this time. More importantly, thank you for your awareness. And to anyone that's listening or watching, I only ask you to do two things. One, love on yourself as much as you can.
Mm,
Accept yourself, accept whatever it is that came into your awareness, the things that you may feel you can never heal from or forgive. you are able to do so. And as long as you allow your heart to be open to the idea of your own personal forgiveness, then you will start to see that energy reciprocate in others, and more importantly, create more loving opportunities for you and maybe even strangers or your closest family members. It's all connected. And secondly, the only thing I ask is, we're in a time now where people are waking up. A lot of human beings who may have not been the best representations of humans in the past are starting to turn a new leaf and do their best to show who they want to be. And if we give them the opportunity to do so, they may surprise you and even possibly show you what's capable of change. And change is actually a real thing. And I'm a living example of it myself. So I just ask that if you do know anyone in your life that you maybe thought will never change, and you've seen examples of them showing you today or a few days ago, or maybe in the next few weeks, that they are able to do so, allow them to show up as who they are now, and always keep your boundaries, but more importantly, be open to new opportunities, because the only way we're going to create more unity is to start accepting others and
Mm,
start accepting the truth and what it means to be love and unity. And we cannot do that if we're still holding people's feet to the fire for the past, creating more reasons for people to feel like they can never be trusted by their peers, because that's what's creating these outward responses where people are showing up and doing things that are sometimes unspeakable or unheard of and heartbreaking. So as long as the road for love is open for others, people will show up, and people will see the opposite of division if we start to embody unity within our own hearts. If
mm,
you follow me, I am on Instagram at
mhm,
So Poetic, ZOPOETIC. I am also on TikTok. I'm not sure if that's going to be a thing next year from what I've been hearing, but
mm,
I am on Instagram. And I do have a GoFundMe page that I'm running right now. My brother here did say that he will take the time to put that up on the meeting notes. But if you want to reach out to me to learn more or just connect with me, feel free to DM me on Instagram. I'll be more than happy to connect with anyone, especially if
mm.
they show a frequency that aligns on the vibration that I'm currently looking to manifest in my life. And I thank you all for your time and your efforts. And just remember to dig deep and breathe deep. Just
Yes.
help when you can.
Yes. That gift of life, that breath. Thank you for that reminder, brother. It's always good to
Of
have that
course.
reminder. And we'll have all the show notes, all the links, all the links on the show notes. And so people can connect with you, support your work. Definitely, if you're able to donate and contribute to your GoFundMe, I encourage you guys to do that, right? That's what humanity is about. If we can support one another, we will be creating a better community for each other. So thank you so much, brother. Blessings on you and your journey and your family. And we have a saying here, and you said it, it's just show up. Just show up, compadre. So thank you for showing up, and
Thank you.
I'll talk to you in the next one, brother.
Peace and love.